Yo, what's going on, E7 fam? I'm back with another how to play video, and it's for one of my favorite IPs, the Guilty Gear Collab. We're going to be talking about the updates to these characters in 2023, very similar to how I did the updates for the Tensura characters earlier on a couple months back. I'm going to be talking about the use cases for all of these characters in the end game, as well as stat lines for all of those use cases. I'm also going to talk a little bit about whether or not these characters are actually still good. Guilty Gear is the first collab that Epic 7 ever partnered with, and I think this is the fourth time that we've actually partnered with them. And most of these characters are still the same as they were at release, no real changes whatsoever. So yeah, general time and power creep, probably not the kindest to some of them. At the end of this video, I will talk about my top 3 choices for this collab, because for some reason, Smilegate and Super Creative have decided that you can only choose 3 out of the 4 possible gacha characters in this collab to actually try to roll for. One of these girls is going to have to end up sitting on the bench, and again, we'll talk a little bit about that through each of the various different character sections. Hopefully you do enjoy the video, and as always, if you do, please consider leaving it a like or subscribing to my channel. It does help me out here a ton. I've been sick throughout most of the making of this video, by the way, so please do excuse any audio or video inconsistencies or just low energy in general. I just really wanted to make sure I had something out in time for Guilty Gear's release date. Please enjoy now. Let's start this video off by talking about the main character of Guilty Gear himself, Soul Badguy. Soul is a straightforward rushdown character in the Guilty Gear franchise, but in Epic 7 he's more of a niche character. Basically, his selling points are his fast speed for a warrior at 119, his Volcanic Viper passive, and his skill 3 Tyrant Rave. These all make him an incredibly effective farmer in game modes such as Labyrinth, as well as specifically the hunt called Golem. Hunts are the primary way for players to get gear in Epic 7 for their characters, and thus make their characters stronger. When you're first starting out, Wyvern and Banshee will be the ideal places to pick up gear, as the sets found within are much more valuable than the ones found in Golem. Once you get further into Epic 7 and are looking to outfit your supports and tanks with better health set and defense set gear, that's when Soul comes in, and that's when he can really shine. Soul is by far the lowest investment character for farming Golem in the game. He pretty much does it with ease. Simply pair him with an AoE damage dealer for the first encounter, a defense breaker for the Golem fight itself, and then sit back and let Volcanic Viper as well as Tyrant Rave do the rest. No Malagora investment needed in this character, by the way. Let's take a quick look at a build for Soul to clear the Golem hunt. Taking a look at the primary sets for the Golem farming build, I'm on either a Destruction set, a Rage set, or Attack set. I've decided not to use any of the bonus stats that these sets give in my calculations. I leave it to you to decide which one you want to go with. Destruction's probably the easiest for most people. Attack is what I personally use, but you probably don't have access to, because if you're farming Golem, you probably need Attack set gear anyway. And then Rage gives you basically the most amount of damage on the character and needs the least amount of attack and critical hit damage. I leave it to you. Offsets could be either critical hit chance or penetration. Both work just fine. Looking at our desired stats, I have 4,800 attack, although this needs to be a bit lower if you're on Rage set, like I said. Defense and health are the base values on the character with I-90 gear, as well as the recommended artifact. Speed is 119, which is Soul Badguy's base speed, so we don't need anything there. Critical hit chance is 85% because Soul has type advantage versus green, and therefore gets a bonus of plus 15% critical hit chance against the Golem. Critical hit damage is 300% here, and since we're not a debuffer in this scenario, we don't need any effectiveness or effect resistance. Taking a look at the right side gear, I want a critical hit damage necklace, an attack percentage ring, and my boots are attack percentage. The artifact should be Daydream Joker because 1, it's a 3-star and everyone has access to it, and 2, it provides the most amount of damage versus the Golem, so it's pretty much a no-brainer choice. Looking at our per piece average, I have 29% attack here, as well as flat attack listed. Make sure that you get some amount of flat attack on your necklace, your boots, your rings, things like that, in order to shore up and make the math a lot easier on this. On top of that, we have 10% critical hit chance and 16% critical hit damage per piece. The other thing that you can do with Soul Badguy is play him as a niche character in PvP. This is largely due to the fact that Tyrant Rave version beta, his skill 3, has the unable to be buffed debuff on it for 2 turns. This makes him an excellent counter pick to certain heroes such as Charon and Briar Witch Assyria, both of these characters gain a buff that makes them immortal for 1 turn when they would reach 0 health. With Tyrant Rave version beta, you could essentially give them the unbuffable debuff, basically make it so they can't get the immortality buff and set themselves to 1 HP with their passive, and then as you can see here, after attacking, inflicts additional damage regardless of whether the attack hits. So Tyrant Rave version beta kills both of these characters in 1 hit. So if you decide that you want to play Soul for that role and have him as a niche PvP character, then I have a build as well here listed for you. Taking a look here at the actual speed PvP build here for Soul Badguy, his primary stats are going to be speed, and his offsets are going to be critical hit chance or penetration, your choice. Attack is going to be 3800 with base defense and health values. Speed is going to be 250 or better, so that way he can cut in front of these characters and several other bridges, so that way he doesn't get picked off. Assuming you have turn 1 with Soul Badguy, he will be able to do the job. Make sure when you're picking this character, you have turn 1. He has no survivability. He can very easily be picked off in a PvP match. Critical hit chance is 100% because we don't have the green bonus guaranteed this time, so might as well make sure we guarantee a crit. And then critical hit damage is 250% or higher. No effectiveness or effect resistance as well on this build. Taking a look at the right side here, we have critical hit damage on the necklace, attack percentage on the ring, and boots or speed because we're trying to take as close to turn 1 as possible. For recommended artifacts, I have Portrait of the Saviors, but this can be replaced with almost any artifact in the game that gives Soul bonus damage. He's simply here to one-shot specific characters like Charon or Briar Witch Asaria, or even potentially a defense broken bruiser like, say, Apocalypse Ravi. Spear of Purification is another artifact that you can choose if you are not able to take turn 1 on Soul, but you don't think that they can actually disrupt him. You can use this artifact to cut in front of a specific character and therefore ensure Soul does his job. Not exactly the greatest, but it is an option. Looking at our per piece average, we have 19% attack, 12 speed, 12% critical hit chance, and 6% critical hit damage. Next up, let's talk about Soul's daughter, Dizzy. If you've played Guilty Gear, then you might know Dizzy as a character with a wide range of projectiles to control space, as well as having some pretty potent offense. Dizzy in Epic 7 is primarily a debuffer that controls fights by crippling the opponent's options with her skill 3 emotional gamma wave, as well as the AoE stun on her basic attack. I use this to catch fish. At one point, Dizzy was the strongest character in all of Epic 7, but as of the recording of this video, debuff cleansers are pretty much a must in nearly all forms of PvP, and this greatly diminishes her usage. She's definitely a character that is in need of buffs, and I would only recommend picking her up and building her if you're a true fan of her design. Dizzy's best use nowadays is as a debuffer to clear Abyss, the game's most challenging PvE content. When it comes to primary sets for an Abyss build on Dizzy, it's pretty much got to be speed with a hit offset. There's not really any reason to play anything else. Speed gives us the most amount of turn cycling and therefore gives us the most amount of chances to land debuffs, and the hit set gives us more effectiveness, which helps us land those debuffs. Taking a look at our desired stats, I have 1,746 attack to 3,000 attack. This is personal preference. If you want your Dizzy to do more damage on S3, then by all means go for a higher attack stat. Defense is going to be 1500 with 15k HP. This gives us a decent amount of bulk, so that way our Dizzy can survive stray hits. If you can't get this high of a number for the lower Abyss floors, like say maybe between 70 and 100, you could definitely go lower than this. If you decide to play Dizzy on the higher floors, then probably needs to be a little bit higher, as the difficulty will be quite a bit more. Speed is going to be 230 or faster, as fast as you could get the Dizzy. The higher the speed is, the more debuffs you land, the easier those fights are going to be in Abyss. Critical hit chance and critical hit damage are base values because emotional gamma wave, her S3 cannot land any critical strikes, so there's no reason to throw stats away on this. Effectiveness is 65%, but you might need to go as high as 85% depending on the mob you're fighting. 65% is high enough effectiveness for most enemies that you fight in PvE in Epic 7. This build, by the way, if you decide to juice the speed even higher than I have here at 230 to somewhere like 260 plus, and you decide to juice the effectiveness even higher than I have it here, like say 150, can function as a pocket pick, last pick in World Arena, so just do keep that in mind. Taking a look at the right side pieces, I have an HP percentage necklace, but you could choose defense percentage if you so wanted. Ring, I have attack percentage here, but you'll notice I have every other type of main stat percentage available as well. And that's because, again, speed is the name of the game on Dizzy, so whichever one gives you the most amount of speed, that's probably what you should choose. You can lean towards attack percentage if you want to make it so that your S3 does a bit more damage. Effectiveness percentage if you want to make sure that you land your debuffs with regularity. Defense and HP percentage if you want more bulk. And then ER is largely if you decide to take this build into PvP, because Dizzy innately has decent starting effect resistance, so she lends herself very well to actually getting that effect resistance stat up there. Boots is speed, so we can take turns as fast as possible. Artifact is going to almost always be Elphelt Valentine, which is a free artifact you can obtain from the game's Hall of Trials. It makes it so that she dispels one buff from an enemy team whenever she makes contact with them. This helps keep the enemies off of the immunity buff, which is the big barrier that Dizzy is always going to have to end up fighting. She's concerned about fighting people with a lot of cleanses, and she's concerned about fighting teams that constantly have immunity buff up, because then she can't really do her job. So this is the best way to keep those pesky buffs off the enemy team. If you don't really need to worry about the immunity buff on the enemy team, Abyssal Crown is going to be the best option for you. And in certain Abyss fights, such as say 105 for example, Abyssal Crown is a godsend and will allow you to keep stun locking specific characters such as Scorpetra on that floor. So again, Abyssal Crown is another amazing option for the character. Looking at the per piece average, I have 15% defense, 11% health, 8 speed, and 8% effectiveness in order to hit that 65%. One other build that I do want to talk about with Dizzy is a PvP build, because I know there are people out there that are going to want to play this character in PvP. I have seen players around the Emperor and Legend rating play a Dizzy like this several seasons back. But I'll be honest with you, in the current state of the game, with things like Ocean Breeze, Luluka, and Badguy being pretty much staples of every game, and now we're in a meta with Landy, who has, Elbrus Ritual Sword and is going to counter on all AoEs, I really don't recommend playing Dizzy. But for those of you who want the build for completeness sake, like I always do in these how to play builds, here it is. A counter PvP build on Dizzy is of course going to be on the counter set in order to leverage her AoE basic attack stun. For offsets, you could go either resist or hit set depending on what you're looking for. Attack is that same range we talked about in the previous build, depending on whether or not you want your Dizzy to do some amount of damage. Bulk stats are going to need to be quite a bit higher than what you had before. Roughly around 1700 defense and 16k HP, or 1600 defense and 17k HP. This is roughly that ratio we see for like Archdemon Shadow. You want her to basically be as bulky as you'd expect an Archdemon Shadow to be. Speed is about 180, but if you can't get this, you could go at like 165 or 170 on the low end. Don't need critical hit chance or critical hit damage. Effectiveness is 0 to 100% depending on your needs and what you're trying to do. And then effect resistance is 0 to 200% depending on, again, what you're trying to do with Dizzy. Some people really lean into a Dizzy that it has insane ER, so that way you can't debuff her, and that way she is guaranteed to just rain down debuffs. You can't really stop her from doing it in the spots that she's really good. I've seen splits of 100 effectiveness, 100 ER, so you have a little bit of coverage on both. I've also seen a little bit higher effectiveness than I have here at around 150. That is pretty much the high end of where I think you want to be. Most of the time, 100% is going to be fine. But yeah, this is pretty much it. Be as tanky as possible on counter set, and have a good mix of effectiveness or ER depending on what you want out of the character. Take a look at the right side gear, HP percentage necklace and defense percentage necklace. Basically your choice. I've used HP percentage for the math. Ring is attack percentage for the math here, but again, you could use whatever you want depending on what you're trying to get out of the character. Boots are speed, as always, to take turns in a timely fashion. Artifacts are exactly the same as the previous build for the same reasons. Keep enemies off of buffs with the Elphelt Valentine, otherwise go for mass control with the Abyssal Crown. Looking at the per piece average on this one, it's pretty high. 21% defense, 14% health, 4 speed, and then you'll notice I have written here anything. That is going to be either your extra attack, or your extra effectiveness, or your extra effect resistance. Basically, whatever you need to make the Dizzy work the way that you want her to work. Next up, let's talk about my main character in Baiken. Depending on when you came from Guilty Gear, Baiken either is going to represent a character that's filled with alpha counters, or a giant ball of fan service. In Strive, she was drastically simplified to be more of a rushdown character with some mix-up potential. This kind of exemplifies Baiken's playstyle in Epic 7. She's a very linear, one-trick pony that is excellent for farming the Banshee Hunt, the game's expeditions, and some challenging PvE content such as Advent. If you can get her fast enough, her skill 3, Gario Tensei, can be used as a PvP opening skill that gives your team a massive amount of tempo as well. Although there are probably a dozen or more better options than that, so I'd look elsewhere unless you're really a die-hard Baiken fanatic and want to play her in PvP. Baiken is worth acquiring for all new players if you need a character that can farm Banshee. She hasn't really changed all that much since my Baiken guide that I put out the last time this collab came around, so if you want more specifics, check that out. Let's quickly go over the two builds from that video, as again, they haven't really changed. The first is a Expedition or Banshee Farmer that is going to be on the Rage set with a critical hit chance offset, and as you can see I have listed other alternatives there as well. Desired stats are 4400 attack, defense is 783, which is basically Baiken's base. Health I have 13k. This is only needed if you decide to play Baiken in Expedition in order for her to survive. If you only play her in Hunt or other things like Advent, you don't really need this amount of health. Speed is 113, which is her base value. Critical hit chance is 85% because you're always going to be bringing her into blue units, therefore she naturally gets plus 15% critical hit chance. And critical hit damage is 300% here, excuse me. Effectiveness is 0% despite the fact that she primarily thrives on landing bleeds on characters. This is because she ignores effect resistance on one stack of bleed, which is really all we need to do the job with these stats. Looking at the right side gear here, I'm on a crit damage necklace, attack percentage ring, and boots are attack percentage. Artifact is Daydream Joker if you decide to play Baiken for hunts. Elia's knife is the best option if you decide to play her for expedition. Looking at the per piece average, it is 23% attack, 10% HP, 8% critical hit chance, and 16% critical hit damage. The other build to talk about here is going to be, of course, the speed build that I alluded to earlier for a PvP based Baiken. This is really not good as of the recording of this video. It's kind of a meme. It's, again, just, it's not good. Just please don't do it. But again, it's here for completeness sake. If for some reason something changes in the future, or Baiken gets buffed, or she gets an exclusive equipment, if something changes, this is basically the stat line for a fast PvP Baiken. She's on a speed set with penetration offset in order to help her get the most amount of damage. Looking at the desired stats, 3900 attack, base defense, base health, speed is 250 or higher. At this point, you probably need to be like 275 or 280 realistically with the way that the game is right now. Maybe with Landy kind of slowing the meta down, maybe 250 is enough to sneak through a Baiken, but I really doubt it. Critical hit chance is 100% because she needs to actually crit in order for her S2 into S3 combo to actually work, and critical hit damage is 270%. Looking at the right side here, we have critical hit damage necklace, attack percentage ring, and boots or speed. At the time of recording how to play Baiken, Alexis Basket was the best option, but there's no doubt in my mind that there's probably several others that are fairly good right now, such as a Symbol of Unity, Portrait of the Saviors if you're going for damage. RNL here is also really good for any thief that takes a lot of turns. Look at Para, look at Ran, that could potentially be very, very good. So I leave it to you to kind of figure out which option you want to go for. Looking at the per piece average, it's 22% attack, 13 speed, 13% critical hit chance, and 10% critical hit damage. Next up is Elphelt Valentine. Elphelt was an absolute monster in Guilty Gear Xrd, controlling space with grenades and having some of the most oppressive corner pressure in any fighting game. If you played Guilty Gear, you either hated this character or you played this character. And that's also somewhat true here in Epic 7. Elphelt is pretty bad outside of one specific PvE niche, which is her use to farm the Katie's Hunt. The only other people really playing Elphelt are basically enthusiasts who really enjoy playing her in PvP as part of an aggressive composition. I think there are comparable options for Elphelt for both PvP and PvE, so I really don't recommend rolling for her. Although I do think her exclusive artifact, Misconfile, is worth picking up one copy of just for PvE usage. Let's take a look at the Katie's 13 build for Elphelt first, and if you're looking for who to pair her with to farm Katie's 13, feel free to check out my Katie's guide, which I'll link down in this video's description. Looking at the actual primary sets here, it's going to be on Rage Penetration, with the offset potentially being hit if you don't actually need the damage. For the desired stats, we have 3700 attack with base defense and health values. Speed is fixed at 160%, with critical hit chance being 100% and critical hit damage being 250%. Effectiveness is going to be 65%, so that way she can land the focus, or rather target, debuff, and a defense break on her S3 Magnum Wedding. Taking a look at the right side gear is going to be a critical hit damage necklace, an attack percentage ring, and the boots are going to be attack percentage, although you could use speed if your subs are high enough. Artifact must be Song of Stars to land that target debuff, so that way we can actually guarantee a kill for the Katie's one-shot farming build. If you are not using this, I don't think that the build will actually succeed. Taking a look at the per piece average, 22% attack, 8 speed, 14% critical hit chance, 6% critical hit damage or effectiveness per piece. Again, if you want more specifics on how Elphelt works in a Katie's team along with who to pair her with, check out the Katie's guide, again linked down in this video's description. Taking a look at the PvP build for Elphelt, it is going to be on speed hit with either critical hit chance or penetration sets being the offsets if you decide to not go for them. Desired stats, I have 1801 attack. This is basically the base value on Elphelt. If you want to juice up her damage, feel free to pump up this attack as well as the critical hit damage that I have listed here. Defense and health are base values. Speed is 275, but if you can go faster than this, I highly recommend you do so. Critical hit chance is actually the base value at 15%, with critical hit damage being at 250%. This might be somewhat confusing to you all, but you must remember that Magnum Wedding puts the target to sleep, which means that you are guaranteed to land a critical hit on that character. If you attack a slept character in Epic 7, the follow-up is guaranteed to land a critical strike. So there's no reason for you to build critical hit chance on this character. Simply just lean into critical hit damage and attack for higher damage. Effectiveness is 150%, so that way we can almost guarantee that we land a Magnum Wedding's defense break on almost everybody except for the highest resistance characters, specifically those Destinas and other cleansers that have like 250 to 300% effect resistance. If you want to tag them, by all means go for an even higher effectiveness score. Taking a look at the right side, I have a critical hit damage necklace, and the ring is going to be effectiveness, but if you want damage, feel free to chase attack percentage. Boots are speed, so we can take turns in a timely fashion, as always. Artifact is going to be Guiding Light, so that way Elphelt starts the game in stealth, so that way if she doesn't get the first turn, she's at least somewhat protected from most things that open and gives you a fighting chance and allow you to get off that Magnum Wedding combo and snowball your team to victory. Looking at the per piece average, it is 17 speed per piece, 6% critical hit damage, 6% effectiveness, and then I have listed here any. That is your choice if you want more attack, more of things like health, defense, whatever you're looking for. This is the slot to put it in. Lastly, let's talk about Elphelt Valentine. If you're familiar with Guilty Gear, then you know this character thrives on pressuring players with her drones and the mix-ups that they create. This style of gameplay, however, doesn't really translate to a gacha game like Epic 7. Instead, Jacko is going to be the closest thing you can get to playing Rushdown in this game. She's the centerpiece of several popular cleave compositions in PvP. For those of you who are new, cleave is essentially where your team tries to win the game instantly before the opponent's team ever gets a turn. Essentially, you overwhelm them with so much aggression that they don't get to play the game. Jacko accomplishes this with her passive skill, Trick or Treat. This gives the unique Chains of Chiron buff to the ally on her team in the backmost slot. This buff grants that ally the ability to inflict debuffs on any attack that they use. Once an enemy has a debuff on them, Jacko will gain 30% combat readiness due to the other part of her passive Trick or Treat, and this most likely means that she takes the very next turn. Her ultimate, Forever Elysian Driver, does bonus damage to targets that are debuffed and grants her an extra turn if it secures a kill. The bonus damage, by the way, on Forever Elysian Driver is quite high if the target has a debuff on them. Even the tankiest characters in the game can die to this thing in one hit, and that's going to basically ensure that Jacko gets another turn. After that, she can use her basic attack, which, if that also lands a debuff, will be followed up with her Dust String, and that does a ton of damage, and that's probably going to also secure another kill. When properly built, Jacko can kill half of a team by herself, and she really doesn't require too much setup. Just put a fast character in the back slot for Chains of Chiron, and just go nuts. Characters like Ran, Pera, and even Conquer Elias are excellent choices to pair with Jacko Valentine. Of all of the Guilty Gear characters that I'm talking about in this video, I think this is the one you definitely want to be rolling for because the character is actually pretty meta in PvP. And you're going to love her, I think, if you're a fan of very aggressive playstyles. Her artifact, Jacko's Symbol, is also a good pickup, and it's the best one for this character. If you're investing bookmarks at all in this collab, Jacko should probably be your first choice. With that out of the way, let's take a look at how to actually play her now in PvP. Taking a look at the primary sets for a PvP build for Jacko, Speed is going to be the primary set for 99% of people watching this video, although Rage could definitely work as well. Rage gives a massive increase to your damage if the target has one or more debuffs, which obviously synergizes very well with Forever Elysian Driver, as well as the artifact Jacko's Symbol, so that's something to consider. For offsets, Penetration is the clear-cut choice as it gives you the most amount of damage, but critical hit chance will work for budget players as well. Looking at our desired stats, I have 3800 attack, although I've seen as high as 4200. Your mileage may vary. Defense and health are going to be base values. Speed is 220. You don't really want to dip too much lower than this. With the 30% combat readiness push, 220 is basically the sweet spot to allow Jacko to take the next turn. If you kind of dip below this at like 218 or 215, then there's a chance that your opponent's opener might cut in front of Jacko, and therefore you might fail your aggressive or cleave style of play. So I think 220 is basically the floor on this character. If you want to go slightly higher, you're more than welcome to do so. Just don't sacrifice too much damage. Critical hit chance is 100% because we need to secure the kill on Forever Elysian Driver in order to complete the cleave. So we don't want to accidentally miss landing a critical strike. Critical hit damage is 300%, but again, your mileage may vary. You may want to actually go quite a bit higher on this. Again, depends on your quality of gear. And since she's not a debuffer, we don't need any effectiveness, and effect resistance doesn't matter because she's not really a cleanser or a tank. Taking a look at her right side gear, we're on a critical hit damage necklace, an attack percentage ring, and the boots are speed, so that way we could take our turn in a timely fashion as always. For the artifact choice, Jacko's Symbol is obviously going to be the best option, but I recognize it's a limited artifact and not everyone will have one at like plus 24, plus 27, or even plus 30 where the artifact really shines. So if that's not something that you have access to, then feel free to use any damage boosting artifacts such as Portrait of the Saviors, which is free during this Guilty Gear collab, or Symbol of Unity, which is a free artifact that you can get from your actual guild. So again, something that increases Jacko's damage is pretty much all she's really looking for. Taking a look at the per piece average, it's 20% attack, 8 speed, 13% critical hit chance, and 13% critical hit damage. Alright, now that we have actually discussed all of the use cases for the characters, let's wrap up the video by talking about my top 3 choices for the Guilty Gear Strive custom group summons. Do note that ReZero will be coming back next week, so if you don't feel like you really need a lot of the characters that are in this collab, feel free to save for those characters next week, as I think Milia is probably quite a bit better than most of the characters in this collab, and her artifact is probably better than anything in this collab save for Jacko Valentine. Taking a look at what I'd actually choose, first and foremost, I would definitely take Jacko Valentine because she is overall the best PvP character out of these 4 that you can choose from, and she is for the most part meta, at least as of the recording of this video, and her artifact Jacko's Symbol is fairly good not only for Jacko but for characters like Terranor Guard in Expeditions. So I think it's overall the best choice for your bookmarks if you decide to roll in this collab. After that, I would choose Baiken because she is an excellent PvE farmer for things like Blue Expedition, as well as Banshee. So if you're struggling in those regards, she's definitely someone you could consider picking up. There are other replacements such as Ram, which we'll be getting for free next week in the ReZero collab, but I do think that even Ram requires a bit higher gear quality than even Baiken. Baiken can be on some pretty much really low quality gear, stuff that most new players should have access to, and she'll perform really, really well. I just think that of all of the Banshee farmers and the Expedition farmers in the game, she's the easiest to gear, and just overall rock solid. Of course, I'm a bit biased being a super big Baiken fan myself. And then after that, I would probably choose Elphelt as my third option, simply because her artifact is Misconfie, or Misconfile, based on how you decide to pronounce the thing. Yeah, it's just a good PvE artifact might have some niche PvP uses. And Elphelt is decent for KD's 13 if you ever decide to go for a optimal one-shot later on in your Epic 7 career. The only character here that doesn't feel like it's worth your time is Dizzy, because Necro and Undine is not really a good artifact, and Dizzy is well past her prime at this point. It's not really worth trying to pick her up and play her in things like PvP, because again, cleansers are the meta, and then even as far as Abyss goes, most of the newer units are so power creep that they can easily carry you through the first 100 floors of Abyss or so, and the last 20 or so are largely dominated by characters like Red Tenebria, Spectre Tenebria, and Terranor Guard, most of which are relatively easy to acquire for most players, Terranor Guard being a 3-star, Spectre being a free choice for every player if you have not used your Moonlight Blessing. You know, Red Tenebria is not even a limited 5-star. At this point, you can use Story Summon to basically acquire almost anyone. I don't know if particularly Tenebria is available during from the Story Summon, but again, it can't be terribly difficult, I feel like, to acquire this character. If you've been playing for about a year or so, you probably already have the character. So again, yeah, Dizzy, not exactly the best choice in a lot of scenarios, so that's why I think she's the one that I would end up skipping. So that's pretty much it for my top 3 choices for the Guilty Gear Strive collab. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you want to see more how to play videos, there should be a playlist on your screen now. And as always, enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye bye now.